The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Troy Astorino. Troy is the co-founder and CTO at PicnicHealth. Troy, welcome to the show.
John, excited to be here.
So Troy, let's start with yourself, please. Can you give us a bit of background of your journey in tech, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and take us up to just before you founded Picnic?
Yeah, for sure. I'm the co-founder and CTO of PicnicHealth. I am responsible for product development here. Super fun job managing engineering, product, and design. I studied aerospace engineering and physics at MIT, but was always on the robotics or software side of things. So everything had a programming bent. Always have a web app or something that I was working on the side, planning on working on. I always had a strong connection to healthcare. Both my parents are doctors, and I spent some summers working in their offices, scribing, taking notes, and generally seeing how important it is to have accurate and complete medical histories for patients. And it was really the convergence of those two things, having a background in software and computing, and then seeing how things worked in healthcare, that brought me to starting to work on PicnicHealth. I saw really a big mismatch between what medical data could and should be able to do for improving patient care and the reality of what medical data was doing. So yeah, I was excited to try to make things better and make medical data work better for patients.
Which is a great segue into my first question, really. It's tell us all about PicnicHealth. So you've already touched on the sort of origin story of the idea behind it. So tell us about who you are. Who are PicnicHealth? What is the mission of the business? And then we'll jump into the role that AI and data is playing in helping you achieve that mission.
We believe that patient-centric medical data has huge power to improve not just individual patient care, but to really accelerate the advance of disease treatment. So what does that mean? What is patient-centric medical data? When you or anyone is interacting with the healthcare system, doctors are taking notes, collecting data about you, about your health. But that information is spread out across a ton of different places. Every doctor you see really has their own medical record system. And for the most part, it's completely siloed. And I feel that it's a real shame. To be able to better treat patients, we believe that we need to be able to have representations of patients' medical state and medical history that spans all of the care that they've had. So touches their entire medical history. So what we do is try to make that a reality. For any patient that joins PicnicHealth, we can get records from every doctor they've seen today, just in the US, but get records from every doctor, pull that in, structure it into a standard normalized representation, and then make that data useful. We do that both at the point of care. So for the patient or a patient's caregiver walking in to see a new doctor, and making sure that doctor has a view on that patient's history, and by empowering patients to contribute their data to research data sets, particularly in rare and chronic diseases.
So what you're describing obviously makes a huge amount of sense and would benefit every patient. The more information, the better the diagnosis and treatment can be. But having done dozens, maybe hundreds of podcasts and conversations with people working in the health tech space, it's an incredibly complex problem that you're trying to solve, really challenging, because there's so many sporadic data sets. So can you give us some insight into how you're going about doing it and how you're leveraging AI, data science, and analytics to accelerate the progress?
Absolutely. The way we do things, some people might consider crazy. We meet the healthcare system where it is. And so for any patient, we are faxing out record requests to their various doctors and then getting records faxed or mailed back to us. And there are some places where we can get data electronically, and we're super excited when that can happen. But in order to get a complete representation for any patient, we need to be able to deal with records from any system. And today, doctors in different systems still a lot of the time are faxing records back and forth. And I mean, to date, we've collected and structured records from over 350,000 doctors, over 75,000 different facilities. And so if we tried to do direct integrations for all of those places, it would have been totally infeasible. So we have to do this somewhat crazy thing of dealing with stuff that's faxed and mailed.
I'm glad you led with that, and I think that's evident as to why it's such a complex problem, is because it's such an analog paper fax data collection problem that many organizations just don't want to put in the groundwork to do that. But you're addressing that head on, which I'm so pleased to hear. But that's not all of what you do. So there's a method to this madness. So once you're obtaining these data sets, walk us through the journey from when you receive it to what you're actually doing with the data and how this is genuinely helping patients when they go to a treatment center.
What we've worked on the most is our system for ingesting data and structuring it and then making it useful. So we've built a ML pipeline for taking in document images. So these faxes, stuff that's mailed and scanned, PDFs if we can get them, and transforming that into structured medical data. We have like in our pipeline, first an OCR step where we're going from the document image to text, then a document segmentation step where we're breaking a document we receive up into different component records. And within each of those records, pulling out different sections, identifying that this rectangle is the history of present illness. This is the medication list. This is a table of lab test results. Within each of those sections, we're then extracting particular concepts. So in that history of present illness, it might be pulling out particular diagnoses, coding those diagnoses with appropriate medical ontologies, and then pulling additional fields that give context to that concept. So in the diagnosis example, it might be like the date of diagnosis. And then after we've structured and tagged information from all the different documents we've received, we synthesize that into a belief about the patient. So running with the condition or diagnosis example, all the different mentions of a particular diagnosis, so the sets of concepts that indicate a diagnosis of some kind, pull that together to get mapping of when the patient was diagnosed, integrating like the information across all these different sources. And dealing with real world medical records, diagnosis is like a pretty simple one. Much more complex would be looking at medication eras. So seeing when patients were on a particular drug, when they switched to a different drug, what strength they were on, how their dosing changed over time. In the real world, contradictions sometimes between different sources or big gaps in someone's record. Being able to use all of the different sources of medical information to piece together a complete picture is really what we specialize in and what we're best at.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
So take us to the other side of it then, and give us some insight into what it's like to be part of the data team. Obviously, this is it's a data ingestion, it's data engineering, it's analytics, and then it's the visualization side. So if I was a member of your data organization, what does it look like day to day? How many people are involved, and what are some of the projects that you and your team are working on?
So we're a Series C company. We just raised our Series C a couple months ago. We have, I think, 24 engineers today, and our focus is some who work on patient-facing experiences, some on data ingestion and structuring on an individual patient basis, and then some that work on packaging up the data that we have gotten from different sources and synthesizing it into representations that are like really useful for research or understanding disease state. On the data structuring team, there's two halves to the team. One piece I didn't mention that's pretty important is in this data pipeline, we have machine learning models that are ingesting and structuring data. But a big piece of why we can get really high quality data is that we push all of that to human review. So we have a big team, actually about 650 folks that are doing medical labeling. So are correcting the output of these models to make sure that we get really high quality data at the end. And that labeling they're doing is not only creating high quality data for output, but is also creating training data that we feed back in to our models to make them more performant. On our structuring team, there's really two parts to it. One, the interfaces and systems for getting labeled data. And then two, on our team building machine learning models that work in these various stages in our pipeline. So getting input data and transforming it into structured output. The team does work with some really cool state-of-the-art models. I think our most exciting / impressive one is a large language model we've built taking a BERT or GPT derived architecture, but applying it to the arbitrary text layouts that you see in medical records, where it's not just like strings of paragraph text, but the positioning of words relative to each other in tables really matters. And we've been able to see like really strong model performance on the really large labeled data sets that we've produced that get to a fifth of the error rate of some more generic models that you might license from GCP or AWS. And then the other sets of challenges we do have a lot of data that's going through. We have tens of thousands of patients, and for each patient, thousands to tens of thousands of observations or events that were really fields that we're structuring about their medical history. And so we have hundreds of millions and billions of medical concepts that we're processing. And so building pipelines to be able to aggregate and structure that information efficiently is an important part of what the team does.
So you mentioned there, Troy, that you've just secured a new round of funding. It's obviously a very exciting time for you in building out PicnicHealth. I want to stay on the topic of the team because a lot of our audience are data professionals who like to learn about companies who are growing, and it gives them some insight into what it could be like. Now that you've got the new round of funding, you're seeing success in the platform. There's a lot of demand for it. When you look ahead for the next 2 to 3 years, what are some of the milestones you're working towards? What are you personally excited about, and where do you see the business growing to over the next 1 to 2 years?
We are really excited for what we're doing next. I think with this round we raised, we're really scaling the team and scaling the business, going into a ton of new disease areas. We're building data sets, and so like recruiting patients in about 15 conditions today. And with this funding, we're expanding into 30 different diseases clustered in neurology and hematology, but generally rare conditions across the board. What really excites me personally is that there's a lot of things that, like you mentioned at the beginning, John, it's a really challenging space, and there's a lot of complexity given how many different systems there are, how they're all customized in one degree or another. That makes like integration really difficult. There's lots of different data sources. Like we focus on medical records, but we also can pull in like claims data, get patient reported outcomes, things like that. But what I'm really excited about is we're at a place where we can really invest in building a powerful, like fast platform that is pulling data from all of these different sources of health information and translating that into patient information really quickly. And a lot of the things that we wanted to be able to build and tackle from the beginning with the company, we're now at a like scale and level of sophistication that we can start achieving those initial goals.
Final question for me then, Troy. A big part of your role as CTO is not just architecting the vision, but it's also amassing a team who can help you get there and along the journey. bringing in people who have the right set of skills, but also getting them excited about the work that you're doing. When you're speaking to candidates about the potential to join PicnicHealth, particularly on the data side, because it's a hyper competitive space, what is it that you tell those data scientists and data engineers about the work you're doing at Picnic that gets them excited to join your company over some of the other great opportunities available to them?
The really cool thing about how we approach things at Picnic is that we tackle some of these really messy, complicated problems head on. We don't shy away from the dirty work that's necessary to ingest and integrate data from like a ton of different sources. And in practice, what that means is we've had this big team of medical abstractors doing a lot of data labeling. What that leaves us today is having this really unique data set that has labels on a huge variety of medical information and has the human oversight necessary to make sure that we're getting to really high quality outcomes. I don't believe that we're going to be able to solve the problems with medical data that exist in the world without taking an approach that is centered around patients and make sure that we have really high quality output for what we're structuring for those patients. And so I think with us, folks are getting, one, to work on something really important and something that's really satisfying, and two, really interesting technical challenges and problems that come with having a really large representative real world data set that I'm very confident is the largest set of labeled data in medical records in the world.
Which would be an incredible achievement. Troy, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate you sharing your story, giving us the backstory behind Picnic, the mission, and just a little bit of insight into just how big an impact it could have for patient care. So we wish you, the team, and everyone at Picnic the best of luck in the months and years to come.
John, thanks for having me on here. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.